You're listening to Greener Lawn, Happier You, produced by Weedex Lawn Care. Join us as we explore all things related to your lawn. Whether you're a seasoned professional, like we are, or you're just starting out, this show is for you. So sit back, grab a drink, and let's grow together. And welcome back to another episode of Greener Lawn, Happier You podcast. What is going on, ladies and grassholes? I am the Seedling, and this is Grass Daddy.
I'm Brennan.
And I'm Nick. We've really dove into quite a bit of talk on pre-emergence. And the importance of that and why we're doing that right now is because that's kind of what we are in the midst of doing right now, is applying all the pre-emergence. So today we wanted to take a little bit deeper dive into the whys for pre-emergence and the effects of pre-emergence, and then we'll kind of get into some discussion on maintenance of the yard.
Yeah, because there's two typical times of the year that you kind of think about doing pre-emergence, or it is the time of the year to do it, and that's the fall and the spring. And I know, like, again, right now we talk about commercial lawn care compared to DIY, because right now we're still winter. Yeah. So you wouldn't think that, we need to be doing pre-emergence yet. But as far as a commercial lawn care company that's servicing 10,000 plus customers, we have to ensure that we get those pre-emergence done in time, so that way we beat that germination process when the soil temperatures do rise. Yeah. So that way we're killing those weeds, after they germinate and before you and I see them. So as a DIYer, you probably have, again, still, I think we hit on this the last podcast, probably mid-March before you have to do that. Yeah. Maybe a little sooner this year. Right. Because this year it has, we had, that week and a half of colder, freezing temperatures, but we didn't have a lot of ice that settled on the lawns or snow or anything like that.
Not like the last couple of years.
Yeah, I think lawns are going to wake up a little bit quicker this year. So, and I know this February is a little bit, warmer than what it has been in the years past. So applying that pre-emergent might come a little bit sooner as a DIYer. Again, you typically just want to average your nighttime temperature and daytime temperature. And when that soil temperature is probably in the upper 40s, like 48 to 50 degrees, that's when you want to start jumping on doing that pre-emergent.
Yeah, and I know we've mentioned before that it's okay to put it down a little bit early, but you definitely don't want to put it down later than when it's supposed to be down.
Yeah, especially as a DIYer, because you're not going to have the resources that we do to get the products that we have, because we use a pre-emergent that not only has pre-emergent control for spring grassy weeds, because like right now the pre-emergents that we're applying are for spring and summer annuals, and crabgrass is the number one culprit that we're going after. That's what everybody kind of thinks of, is the spring and summer nuisance weed. We're using a pre-emergent that can not only kill the weed before you and I can see it, but it can actually kill the weed all the way into immature stage of like all the way to its third to fifth tiller. So it's actually killing the weed after it's germinated as well. So customers that we pick up, anywhere in that March to mid-April timeframe, we're also able to kill that crabgrass in a post-emergent form as well as a pre-emergent form.
Let me ask you this, because I know a lot of people get crabgrass and Dallas grass confused. Those are probably the most common mistaken weed in North Texas.
Because everybody thinks everything is crabgrass. Right. Even in the winter.
Right. A pre-emergent will help with the crabgrass, but a pre-emergent won't necessarily help with the Dallas grass.
I mean, there's not a pre-emergent labeled for Dallas grass, when you're reading the herbicide label. But in my opinion, if you're able to post-emerge Dallas grass out of a lawn, and again, it's Dallas, Dallis, not Dallas as the city, because not only does Dallas Metroplex deal with this weed, it's more of a southern type weed that we deal with all throughout the South. And it is a weed that's a perennial, so it doesn't die after, because the difference between crabgrass and Dallas grass, crabgrass is an annual, so it is going to come to seed, put the seed out, flourish throughout the summer, and then that seed will lay viable throughout the winter in your soil, and then again do the whole thing. It's a cycle where every year it dies. That same plant does not regrow, it dies, and then it regerminates from seed. Where Dallas grass, it can live for 2 or more years, that same plant.
Right.
or some of them might even be older than that, but that's the definition of perennial, is it lives for 2 or more years. If I'm right, I think I'm right on that. But that's one of the main differences but pre-emergence, in my opinion, if you get the Dallas grass out of the lawn, I think it can help control it.
Okay.
But we don't ever go out there and say like, hey, this is what it's going to do, because we know if we get a lawn that's ridden with Dallas grass, we're going to have to kill it through a post-emergent first. Then on the flip side of it, if their neighbor right beside us, their lawn, if it's enamored with Dallas grass, hey, you probably want to refer them, because we have a referral program and you get $35 for every person you refer to Weedex Lawn Care. But if we kill all of your Dallas grass off, it's not like, well, okay, the next year you're going to have just as much Dallas grass or more Dallas grass. We can most likely keep it out of your yard for the most part. You might get a clump here or there that we have to control, on a very minute level. But I do think that we can keep it out of the lawn for the most part.
But is that because it's more of a grass type than it is a broadleaf weed per se?
I think it's because of the size of the seed.
Okay.
I think it's a larger seed. And again, because it is such a long structured root system, it's just a real hardy plant.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably some of it.
Okay.
I mean, I would classify it just like Bermuda grass. I mean, it's a very hardy plant, just like Bermuda grass.
Yeah.
I mean, the only thing that, there are a couple post-emergence that are specifically geared towards killing Bermuda grass. But mainly, if you're going to go after Bermuda grass, you're going to have to use a non-selective. As we're having to use on Dallas grass now, you're having to use a non-selective like Roundup, glyphosate.
Right.
Because there used to be products out there that, worked really well on Dallas grass. There's other products out there that say they're going to kill Dallas grass, but we've tested them and their efficacy is just not great. So that's why we went to using a non-selective and backpack spraying it.
Yep.
But going back to crabgrass, again, in pre-emerging, it is one of those weeds that it's really easy to control with the use of pre-emergence, but very difficult. That's the thing is with crabgrass as well. Well, it's very difficult to control after the fact, especially the more mature it gets, because of it being a summer annual. There's not a lot of herbicides that you can spray on a broadcast spectrum on a lawn during the summer that's safe for the lawn, but will kill the weed, and you don't, end up with not only a dead crabgrass plant, but you also end up with a very shocked, struggling, turf grass. Like say if I was spraying a Bermuda lawn that crabgrass escaped in because I missed my pre-emergent window, I go out there with a herbicide to kill the crabgrass, I'm definitely going to shock and stunt that Bermuda grass during that time of the year.
Yeah. Yep.
So its importance is obviously the importance of pre-emergence, whether it's fall or spring. We'll talk about spring right now because that's the time of essence. That's what we're, coming up on. I think Groundhog Day was the other day. Punxsutawney Phil said that it's going to be in early spring. He did not see a shadow. I think that's how it works. I don't really pay attention too much to that. But again, with spring upcoming, we're going to talk about spring pre-emergence and why it's important. And it's the same thing for fall, is that it's to eradicate that weed before you or I see it. So that way, I'd rather kill that weed before I have to visually see it than after, because it's usually, I don't know if it's necessarily safer for the turf grass, but usually it is. Post-emergence, I think, are probably worse for the turf grass than pre-emergence, even though pre-emergence do have some of their own setbacks on turf grass. I do think if you're having to chase the weeds after the fact with post-emergence, especially during the summer growing season, it can be detrimental to the turf grass.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know that, you can say it any better than that. The importance of is to, make sure that you're preemptively killing the weed instead of doing it reactively.
Yeah.
I mean, it's always better to be proactive than reactive. Yeah. And that's kind of what you're doing with the pre-emergent. You're being proactive with your weed control. That's why it's considered pre, because you're killing the weed before it emerges.
Yeah.
When is the best time to do it? Again, we talked about that. As far as a commercial lawn care company, I would imagine there's not a commercial lawn care company out there that is of relevant size, and even the smaller guys at this point in time that aren't already out there applying pre-emergence.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, I'm not going to say if you have a mom and pop type deal that mows lawns, does landscaping, and all of that they might not have done that yet, because maybe they're doing their spring scalping and putting down their granular fertilizer and pre-emergent at the same time.
Right.
So, but as far as like a larger commercial weed control and fertilizer and plant healthcare company, all of that, I would imagine all of them are going at it right now in full force, wouldn't you?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So for a DIYer, though, just to reiterate it, what is the latest possible date that you think they could put that down and still achieve good efficacy out of that product?
I would imagine mid-March.
Okay.
And like if I was going to put a date on it on the calendar, I would say by mid-March.
Okay.
So I would say, like you're probably okay if you still haven't done it. I would say you need to be getting geared up to put down that herbicide, and I think we talked about it in the last podcast, is you're probably most likely going to get that embedded in on a granular fertilizer, and I would imagine anywhere from the 1st of March to the middle of March is probably going to be the optimal time to do that.
Yeah.
But again, like you said earlier, Nick, I don't think that it's a bad thing if I was a DIYer to go out and do it now. And you're probably not going to get the benefit of the fertilizer on it, but you're not going to miss that window, and then do it again into March.
Right.
Like I don't think you're harming the lawn at all by doing that, just as a DIYer knowing that I hit that window.
Yeah.
How do you ensure that it's performing its best? What do we always preach to our customers about making sure pre-emergents perform at their best?
Water it in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's important to water it in, and the reason why we always are preaching that to our clientele or anybody we talk to is because pre-emergent herbicides are root-activated herbicides. They're soil-activated. I shouldn't really say root-activated. They're soil-activated herbicides. That's where the grass seed is or the weed seed is that we're wanting to kill. That's where the immature plant is going to be after it germinates and before it emerges through your turf grass. Is in that thatch layer. It's in that top 1 inch of your soil, and that's where we want that pre-emergent to live.
Right.
So if you don't water it in and you just leave it on the upper plant material, and then it's going to volatilize into the air if it's liquid, or if it's granular, it might just break down and not actually get into the turf grass. So if we're not catching rainfalls, you need to water it in. And how much do we recommend to water it in?
About 1.5 inches.
Yeah. So in my opinion, the first probably 1/4 inch is probably getting it off the leaf blade and into maybe the lower plant material. The next 1/4 inch of water is probably getting it into the thatch layer. The next 1/4 inch is probably getting it in the tops, just right on the soil surface, and so on, right? So it usually takes about 1.5 inches to get it into the soil structure where those seedlings are living.
Yeah.
And where that, weed in its immature state is going to germinate and live where that pre-emergent can actively go to work at killing it.
Yeah. And one of the biggest reasons I hear for the pre-emergence for this time of year not getting watered in is people have their irrigation shut off for the winter. But it's important to realize that the upper plant material, yes, that is dead plant material, but your root system is still very much alive. So to help ensure that you're getting a good transition out of dormancy in the spring, don't shut the irrigation off. Run it every 2 to 3 weeks, and one, that's going to make sure that pre-emergent is able to do its job, but 2, it's going to keep your root system healthy over the winter.
And if you're a DIY or you're hiring a professional lawn care company like us, make sure that, obviously you're getting communication from your lawn care company about when that pre-emergent was done. You're getting a service notification, you're getting communication from your route manager after that treatment. Make sure that directly after that treatment, you're following their watering instructions, because you're going to have to do more cycles of your irrigation system than what you would normally be doing on that, every other week interval to keep your soil structure moist and wet throughout the dormant cycle for the health of the turf grass. In my opinion, just right after that, usually within 5 to 7 days is what we recommend.
Yeah.
Is to do that 1.25 to 1.5 inches of watering to get it into the soil structure where it needs to go to work at killing that weed before you and I see it.
Yep. Yeah.
I mean, in a nutshell, I think that's really it on pre-emergent weed control. It is the most important part of weed control that we do.
Yep.
Because it's always better. That's where you get your real results. That's where our route managers know that's where they need to spend their time on the application side of it. Not that they're not doing it every treatment, but they know that they need to spend even more considerable time making sure that they're not cutting any corners, because if you slack on your pre-emergence, you're going to suffer during the summer
Yeah.
and winter times when you're not putting down
It's
pre-emergence
very apparent when it doesn't get put down right.
or watered in
Yeah.
correctly.
Yep.
So as well on that, you need to make sure your irrigation system is operating correctly. I know just even over this winter, mine quit working, and I had most irrigation systems now have master valves. So that way, if there's a break in the main line of the irrigation system, it is not always constantly leaking. It would only be leaking if your controller is sending power to a solenoid on that system.
Interesting.
So that way it's right after your backflow device. So that way it kind of mitigates some of that issue with the leak.
Yeah.
But I would have never known that it wasn't working if I wasn't just like testing it every once in a while during the winter. So you always need to be testing your irrigation system. And most people are running their irrigation systems early in the morning or late at night or during the, wee hours in the morning, whatever you want to say. So you're not physically watching your irrigation system work. Like I know I've got my next door neighbor who has a couple geysers. And I even told him about it, and he was like, yeah, I'm aware of that. I just don't have the time to fix it. I'm like, oh, but you have the time to invest in spending the extra money in your water bill, but you don't have the extra 10 minutes to replace this. And it's not like a broken pipe. It was a broken head.
Yeah.
And all he's got to do is spend an extra 10 minutes to replace a head.
Yeah, they are not complicated.
So moving on, we're going to talk about maintenance schedule and why.
Okay.
So we talked about spring is upcoming, spring scalping and time of year, Nick. And what types of turf grasses are we scalping in the spring?
Your thin-bladed grasses you can scalp. Bermuda, zoysia. As long as it's the thin-bladed zoysia. You want to do that your first cut of the year. So that would be... It kind of depends on the temperatures when the grass is starting to wake up.
We recommend after the last freeze, and that's hard to predict sometimes because we can get that one off every once in a while, but I would say you're generally safe that first couple weeks of March is when to do your spring scalping.
Yeah. And the reason for that is you're cutting off all that dead plant material that we just talked about, and then you're allowing that new growth to receive that photosynthesis process, which is going to help really bring the grass out of dormancy in a much more timely manner than, letting that grass grow through that dead material. It hinders that process.
And yeah, you're getting your soil. We talked about soil temps earlier, right? Soil temps for warm season turf grasses. Don't quote me on this, but I know it needs to be somewhere in that lower 50-degree range, 50 to 53 to start waking up.
Yeah.
So scalping that lawn allows that soil to be exposed, to allow that soil temp to rise quicker because it doesn't have that 3 inches of dormant or dead plant material buffering that heat from getting to it. So scalping it compared, so if you have a neighbor to the right or the left of you, you scalp, they don't, you're probably going to be anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks ahead of
at least
your lawn coming out of dormancy than them.
Yep.
Because if you're not doing that, then you're having to wait for all of that new growth to grow up through the dormant or dead plant material before you start seeing a green lawn. And not only that, your lawn is going to be real patchy because of that, because you're not going to have certain areas that might be quicker or slower than other areas. So as you're mowing on a weekly basis or bi-weekly, whatever that is, your lawn is going to be patchy because it'll have patches of dormant, patches of new growth, and it's just going to look real unsightly until we get into the middle of May when it's all out of dormancy.
And that's also the watering over the winter. That's when you start to see the effects of that too. If you're not watering over the winter, your grass is coming out in a drought-stressed state. You're going to see a lag in the grass coming out of dormancy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maintenance following the scalping, and we go into other turf grasses like St. Augustine, wide-bladed zoysia. They're the same way. I mean, that plant material is a little bit different, actually. I mean, wide-bladed zoysia it has its propagation underground and above ground, so it's stoloniferous and rhizomatic. So you're going to have a part of that plant material. And so is Bermuda. It's rhizomatic and stoloniferous. I just feel like you're safer scalping that lawn than a wide-bladed zoysia. I just don't know. Maybe it's just a mental thing for me to get over. Scalp wide-bladed zoysia. But St. Augustine as well, you're not having to have it mainly grow up from the roots up or the soil structure. you'll start greening back up and shooting new leaf blades right off of the runners that are already there. So again, on the mowing with it, you don't scalp it. You probably start cutting it on a weekly basis. As soon as you start seeing the lawn actively growing, and I would just stay off of that lawn until you see that. And that might be April. That might be the middle of April. I can't give you that exact time frame.
Yeah.
But I would just kind of stay off that lawn and mowing it on a weekly basis until you start seeing that top growth.
Yeah.
As far as the maintenance following the scalping of your thin-bladed grasses like Bermuda or Zoysia, you're going to come right out of the gate probably raising your mower height maybe by, after that scalping, an inch or so. You know, I don't know directly. It might be a little less, a little more.
Would you recommend just popping up a notch each time until you get to that 2.5, 3 inch mark?
Yeah, because after you scalp it, you're going to wait until you start actively seeing enough growth where when you go start on a weekly mowing schedule where you're going to cut that third off every time. And yeah, like probably raise it up maybe a notch or half a notch and then mow weekly at that for a couple weeks. And then as you start getting more growth out of it and then raise it up a half a notch, mow at that for a few weeks. And that's kind of my philosophy on it is probably from, like, let's say that lawn is completely out of dormancy middle of April and you're mowing weekly. From that time until maybe June, you're going to be raising your mower height on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, maybe more likely a bi-weekly or even every 3-week basis by half a notch. When you get to, in my opinion, middle of June, 1st of July, you might already be at the highest setting possible on a weekly mowing schedule, especially when the dog days of summer hit and you want to only cut the top third of the leaf blade, which is probably going to put you closer to mowing Bermuda grass at a height of 3 inches or a little higher. And I'm fine with that for me.
Yeah.
Because again, I think we've talked about it in the past, is that you never want your lawn, or you always want your lawn to be just as green after you cut it as it was before. So if you want it at that, that's where I'm a little contrary to a lot of people that I talk to in the industry. Is they're like, no, you just consistently mow it at that 2.5 on a weekly basis. I've done that just from field experience, and it's never worked for me on a 5 to 7 day interval. Now, you can keep that 2.5, that 2.25 on hybrid Bermuda if you're mowing, like when you get to the dog days of summer, especially when you're putting off a lot of, if you're fertilizing as well decently, you're putting on top growth, that might hinder it as well, not just the dog days of summer. But I've never had it to the point where I can always keep my grass just as green after I mowed as it was before. I'm always cutting too much leaf blade off.
Right.
So I always have it to about the tallest setting or almost the tallest setting by 1st of July.
Yeah.
And then I mow it at that setting the rest of the year, especially if I have a really nice, healthy lawn.
Okay.
And if I wanted it shorter, then I would just have to mow more frequently. Maybe you got to mow on a 3-day interval.
Yep. Yeah.
So that transitions us into mowing heights. What's your opinions on mowing heights with your expertise, Nick?
I like them higher. I feel like the higher they are, so around 3 inches, and that's
even for
Bermuda grass. It does have a different look. It doesn't have that real crisp, clean cut look. However, I feel like you get
they're greener.
They're greener, and I feel like you get more protection
from because you're able to protect that soil from drying out as quick, and you're also creating a less weed-ridden yard because that canopy of that thicker turf grass is protecting weeds from being able to get sunlight to germinate.
Yeah, it just smothers them out.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm in the same opinion. I like, especially if you're mowing on a 5 to 7 day interval, and when I say 5 to 7, most people they're mowing every Sunday, or they have a mowing company that's coming every Wednesday. So usually it's more of an every 7 day window.
Yeah.
I think if you're on a 5 day window, maybe you could be at that 2.5 or 2.25.
Yeah.
But on a true 7 day window, which is what people are doing, I don't know why we always say 5 to 7 because truly it is a 7 day window. I think when you get to that July time period into June, you need to be mowing even Bermuda grass. St. Augustine, always the taller the better.
Yes.
But even on a 7 day interval on Bermuda grass, I think you need to be mowing that 3 inch height.
Yeah, I agree.
And if you're edging and you're weed eating, I think it looks good until you get to maybe that 5th or 6th day, and then you can okay, yeah, I need to edge or weed eat. And then, but after you cut the grass and you edge and weed eat, that grass looks good because you're not cutting into the plant material that is brown. You're not cutting too much of the leaf blade off.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, I think that's something where you and I might have contrary opinions to, I talk to other people in the industry that are on different sides of this, and they're like, you need to be mowing at 2 1/4 on a 7-day interval. I'm like, I just don't think you've spent enough time out in the field seeing the amount of lawns we have to realize that by the time you get into those dog days of summer,
That's pretty short.
you need to be mowing almost at the highest possible setting on your mower.
Yeah.
Especially August. It does
it's
depend
too hot.
on the year.
Yeah, it's too hot.
Or you're on the opposite side and you're irrigating the heck out of your lawn, and you've got a good fertilizer program, so you're putting on a lot of top growth, so you're still needing to mow a little bit taller because of the growth that you're getting in between the periods.
Yeah.
Unless you're using like plant growth regulators, which that's something we might do in the future that could help people maybe, not have to be so crucial on mowing on that 7-day interval. Maybe you could extend that to 10 to 12 days.
Mm-hmm.
That might be something we play with in the future, but plant growth regulators can help slow down that growth pattern of that plant.
Yeah.
So you could do a little bit longer.
Right.
Yep.
Now, as far as explain a little bit how the effects of like a poorly maintained mower can affect the health of the grass. Mainly, I think it comes down to how sharp the blades are or how dull the blades are.
And yeah, I agree. So you're going to see that visual aesthetic of that more on a wider, rigid leaf blade like zoysia.
Yep.
Or, zoysia, even thin-bladed zoysia is more of a rigid leaf blade than Bermuda. But then you got St. Augustine that maybe isn't rigid, but it is wide.
Yes.
So if you're cutting it with a dull mower blade, it's like running that leaf blade, that top maybe 1/8 inch or whatever, through a paper shredder.
Yep.
So from, the street or maybe the neighbor's lawn or whatever, you can look at that lawn and go, oh my gosh, something's wrong with it. It's discolored, it's brown, it's yellow. Then you get right up on it and you start digging into the lawn. It's like, well, all the leaf blade's green except for that top little
tip,
1/8 inch, that top tip that looks like it's been ran through a paper shredder. And then it's an infiltration spot for insect and disease.
Yes.
It's a direct pathway for insect and disease to affect your lawn when you're shredding that tip of that leaf blade like that. So keeping your mower blades, most people recommend sharpening them once in the spring, like when you do your annual mower maintenance. Like if you're a DIYer like myself or you, like if you mow your own lawn, like you typically want to do your spark plug change, your oil change, sharpening your mower blade, whether you're doing that yourself or taking it to a shop right before you start your weekly mowing regimen. Now, if you have certain types of turf grasses that might dull that mower blade, or maybe you have whatever, elements on your property that are going to cause that mower blade to dull off quicker, then maybe you got to sharpen it twice a year. I don't know. Maybe you need to have a spare mower blade sitting around your garage that you can change it out mid-season and then go get your other one sharpened and then you just swap them out.
Yeah.
And we have a good video on our YouTube channel that myself and one of the gentlemen from Richardson Saw and Lawn put together on mower maintenancing, sharpening the mower blade. Abby did not film the video, so I can't say that the film quality is as good as what she puts out. But nonetheless, it's a good informative video on how to go about mower maintenance.
Yeah.
Whether you're going to do it yourself in your home garage or you're taking it to someone like Richardson Saw and Lawn, which I highly recommend them. They've got great, service technicians there, and they're just friendly staff. They've been in the Metroplex, I think, for like 50 years.
Yeah.
And it's a family-owned business, just like we are. Give them a little shout out, not that they'll ever even know with the 7 viewers that we have or subscribers. One of our bullet points, we got 10 now. 10. We're up to 10. Is how often, but I think we, hit that on, I think we beat that to death already, is like how we feel it is important to mow on that 7-day interval.
Yep.
Because you just cannot have a nice quality turf grass mowing on a bi-weekly or a 14-day interval the way that you want your lawn to look. You're just never going to get those results.
And if you're skeptical about that, try it for 1 year, 1 growing season, and I guarantee you will see a difference in the grass. Guarantee it. I'm not going to guarantee anything, but you should see a big difference.
You're going to see a difference. There's no way you can't. Even if you're not watering correctly, you're going to see a difference.
Yes.
And it's been many years ago, but there was a lawn in McKinney, and I can remember it vividly. It was a corner house, and I had a conversation with this customer, and her yard, she was doing everything right except mowing bi-weekly. And I told her if she would mow weekly for the next 2 months, and it didn't give her the lawn that she wanted and I wanted, I'd pay the difference in her mowing bill out of my own pocket. And I didn't have to pay her anything. Long story short.
Yeah.
And I was willing to do that. I was willing to make that deal with her because I knew that she was going to get the intended results.
Yep.
Just by mowing weekly. Because as we've said in our podcast, I don't know numerous times before, but I know I've said it before, is there's 3 ways to keep a yard looking nice in layman's terms. Mowing, watering, and what we do.
Yep.
Mowing and watering are always going to be more important than what we do because it directly affects how well our products work.
Yeah.
Because if you're not doing those 2 things correctly, then you might not as well even hire us. I mean, the only reason that you would hire us or a competitor or do weed control yourself if you're not going to mow and water correctly is if you're just trying to keep your HOA off your butt.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're going to probably do enough.
And we have those.
You're probably going to do enough weed control to keep your HOA off of your case if you're mowing on a bi-weekly basis and getting your normal, services throughout the year. That's going to be enough unless you have Dallas grass. And then you're going to have to do the Dallas grass treatments. And then we get those customers that are upset, well, y'all are Weedex, why aren't y'all controlling these? And then we have to go through that whole explanation.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So one segment that we want to start doing here on our podcast is a Q&A. But as Abby pointed out, we have 10 subscribers right now. Or followers, however you want to say that. I'm not trendy. But we're not getting anybody that's sending in any questions, so we can't give them any answers to our questions. But I know you're linking it at the bottom of the podcast for them to send in questions, yes? So Abby perused social media and got a couple of questions from the top, I think it's Facebook groups that talk about lawn care in our area. So we're going to kind of dive into a few of those questions. I know that hopefully some of these are questions that our 10 viewers or subscribers or followers might have, and hopefully future subscribers or followers might have. So the first one is, and I think I don't know that we've hit on this. I think maybe we've hit on aerations.
Maybe a touch, yeah.
But do you want to go over that first question, Nick?
Sure. It says, when is the best time to mechanically aerate? I've got Bermuda with pretty thick clay that I've been top dressing twice a year. I also liquid aerate twice a year as well. I've usually been hiring a company to mechanically aerate in the fall, but just wanted to get everyone's opinion on best time to do it. My personal opinion on this is to do it earlier in the year, as in like early spring, because then you're giving that yard an entire growing season to recover.
Because it is damaging. I mean, even with all of its benefits, it does have some damaging factors.
Yeah.
Like you don't want to go. I'm not saying that it can't still be beneficial, but you probably don't want to go out there and aerate your yard in the middle of July.
No.
Not saying that your yard still can't recover from that if you're doing everything right, but that's not the best time for it.
It's just going to put another stressor on it, I think.
Yeah, so if you're
summer.
If you're DIYer, I would say right around that mid-March, 1st of April time frame, right when the lawn's starting to come out of dormancy. I think it'd be a great, like if I was a DIYer, this is how I would do it, Nick. I would scalp my lawn, and then immediately after I scalped it, I'd probably let it have like maybe a couple weeks to see if it puts on growth, and then that's when I would aerate.
Okay.
And then I wouldn't do liquid aerations, personal opinion.
I was going to ask you about that. What's your opinion on those?
There are products and they're out there that rep themselves as liquid aerations. I know companies that use them and they swear by them, but they're never going to replicate what a mechanical core pulled aerator will do, where it'll physically pull a core out of the soil, deposit it back, and then if you want to go above and beyond, you can rake that core back out and just get rid of it. Yeah. But it's not going to hurt for that core to sit on your yard and break down and go back into your soil. It's not going to affect the soil structure, in my opinion, that's already there. Yeah. There's there's contradicting opinions on that as well, I would say. But again, if I was a DIYer, I would scout my lawn, let it kind of recover from that, get some growth back on it, then immediately aerate it. And then as well, I would have a truck bed full of good compost, peat moss, whatever that is. I think there's like that Dyna soil or whatever. Or there's a company called
Dino Dirt.
Dino Dirt. There's a
Yep.
company called Earthkind Services, and they make their own compost, and they're expensive. I know they are. I would call them out there, or I just go to like Living Earth or somewhere like that,
Yep.
and I would compost the yard. Put something in there that's more permeable, can help with the organic matter in my soil, but mainly making it more permeable without hot spots. Like I would not do sand because we have clay-based soils, and if you go in there and you aerate your yard and you spread sand out on it, then you're not really changing your soil structure. All you're doing is creating hot spots or
Yep.
potential for hot spots where you have areas of your yard that are, I guess, leaching that water quicker than others, and then you might end up having areas of the yard that are drying out quicker than the others. So I wouldn't go back directly with sand. I'd go back more with a compost that's a little bit looser, that's not gonna be so permeable such as sand.
Yeah.
And then depending on my yard, I might top dress it again later in the year, and then I do it in the fall. I think as a DIYer, you're not gonna lose benefit. I don't think it's as beneficial to do aerations in the fall as it is in the spring. But again, if you have a poor draining yard, or if you have a yard that is really, like I think this person said, they have, which we all have, real clay soils in North Texas. It's all hard pan clay. But if that is your issue, your soil's not draining well, you're getting a lot of runoff. Then yeah, I'd see the benefit of doing it again in the fall and then composting again.
Yeah.
Now, us as Weedex Lawn Care and a lot of other lawn care companies, I know like True Green, I think they aerate year round. I mean, I always see them with aerators on their trucks. But we only do them from roughly, first of February, middle of February, all the way until about the middle, end of May.
Yeah.
Now, that time window, I'm not going to sit there and say as a DIYer, that's the time window I would do it. It's just, again, we're doing 1,500 to 2,000 aerations. I can't get those done in a week and a half.
Right.
We run two-man crews, and it takes us about, roughly 3 months to get them done.
Yeah.
So, but again, as our lawns are starting to come out of dormancy later and later every year, I don't know if that's climate change or what that is. It just seems like every year they're coming out of dormancy later. I don't think, it's a bad thing to be all the way. I don't like to get into that June, July timeframe. I always get frustrated when we get that far out, which we typically don't.
Yeah.
But that middle of May timeframe is a good cutoff time for me as a commercial lawn care company.
I agree.
Again, going back to the liquid aerations, I don't know tons about them.
That was going to be my question. How does that work? What's it supposed to do?
I mean, it's synthetic products that are supposed to break down soil compaction ultimately. And they might have wetting agents in them that can help the soil retain water better. Again, I don't know a lot about them. I've never researched liquid aeration products. But again, I'm a firm believer in mechanical aeration.
Yeah.
Just because I think that's just one process that you can't supplement through a synthetic product. Now, we do offer at Weedex Lawn Care what we call a soil builder program that has a lot of those same beneficial factors that probably these liquid aerators plus more have in them. I mean, it has 4 or 5 different products in there. One that's kind of going to be like a B12 shot. Basically, there are a lot of plant extracts that when your plant gets stressed out, it can't produce itself. So we're giving that to it in a supplemental form where it can have those extracts. So that way when it, goes to those stressors of, whether it's a disease or an insect, attacking it, or if it's drought stress or whatever it might be, it helps that plant on its own revive from that.
Yes.
And it also has like micronutrients. It also has a wetting agent where it helps with water retention and so forth. So the next question is, anyone know what kind of weed this is and what kills it? So it is in a rock bed. So if I was you, I would just spray it with Roundup.
Yep.
Because and I would be careful if there was, maybe a shrub or a plant adjacent to it to not get drift, and don't overspray it because you don't want that product to leach in the soil. But if you can isolate spray it with Roundup, active ingredient glyphosate, that's what I would do. And they do make products that you can put in your flower beds as long as you don't plan on putting annuals out there in certain times of the year. That is a pre-emergent that can prevent this stuff. I'm sure you can go to Home Depot, Lowe's, Callaway's to get those bed pre-emergents and put those in your beds to help prevent that, or pull it out, hand pull it, or spray it with Roundup, because you can even look at the root on this plant, the real fibrous root. It looks like poana, so I'm gonna put it right there or annual bluegrass, and it's a winter weed that we put down our pre-emergence roughly middle end of August all the way through middle end of October. Again, we're not spraying flower beds because flowers and shrubs are weeds too. They're just weeds we like, and they have a purpose. So we only spray the turf grass or the turf grass area because these are selective herbicides that we're putting out. And we know that, unless somebody is, telling us that they want a sod, then we keep it off, or seed, we keep it off those areas.
Yep.
Because it's going to prevent seed or sod, or if you're wanting to do newly established landscape plants in those areas, it's going to prevent those from rooting. So, but if from this picture, from what I can tell, it's in a rock bed. I don't see any adjacent plants near it. So I would just post them out.
Yeah.
Or pull them out with my hand, not head, but hand. And when I say post them out, just spray them with Roundup.
Yeah. Yeah.
You got the next one, Nick?
It says this guy wants to know what the best type of sod to put down is. He is located 45 minutes north of Dallas, and he is in full sun. So he sounds like he's in the Denton area.
Maybe. Denton, Aubrey, Salina, Prosper.
Bermuda, for sure.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, full sun, Bermuda.
It's the most hardy turf grass.
Yeah, low maintenance. Yeah. You could get away with a zoysia, but I think you would just have better results with a Bermuda.
Yeah, it's going to be cheaper too.
Yeah.
I don't know. I haven't priced sod out in a while. You've probably done that since I have, but I would imagine it's going to run quite a bit cheaper.
I've seen a zoysia yard and a Bermuda yard. Both experience drought stress, and it seems like Bermuda bounces back quite a bit quicker than a zoysia yard will.
Yeah, and because if a zoysia yard goes into drought stress, I think again, I wouldn't take me for granted on this, but the last time I've researched this, I think most zoysias, cultivars of zoysias, will recover roughly about 6 inches laterally a year, where Bermuda could recover, triple, quadruple, or whatever times that a year.
Significantly quicker. Yeah,
I would definitely go with Bermuda, in my opinion, in North Texas.
For sure.
I mean, unless you know that you're just the type of guy that's always going to water, mow right, and never let it get into any type of stress factors, and you want to spend the extra money on zoysia because you love how it looks, then I'd go zoysia. But other than that, I would just go with a hybrid Bermuda.
Yeah. Yep.
So the next one is top dress versus level. How do I understand it? As far as leveling your yard, there are a lot of newly built homes that when they come in there, they just put it right on top of contractor soil, and your yard is really unlevel, and you know that because of when you're mowing it. Maybe that's where this person is coming from on this. So I think over time with top dressing, you can achieve both results. Like as far as leveling, like if you're wanting to do that with like golf courses do with sand and all that, that's probably not my expertise. I've just never been a person that wants to level or top dress with sand. So I would always recommend to do that with some form of compost.
Yep.
I mean, that's probably just, again, leveling is probably just not something that I really have a lot of experience in.
Yeah.
I kind of understand it. I see why you want to do it, but I've just never done a lot of it.
Right. Me neither.
You got the next one. What effects will dumping paint water? Yeah, I'll let you go into that one.
Okay, so what effects will dumping paint water, cleaning paintbrushes, and etc. have on the yard? A general contractor has finally finished from my house fire, and they were not subtle about dumping it in the middle of my yard.
It can be detrimental.
It can be detrimental. We were talking about this before the recording, and you were saying that if the grass is dormant, you may see minimal effects. But if it's during the growing season, you're going to see some effects of that for sure.
I mean, I don't know if it'll be as detrimental as like dumping gasoline or oil on the lawn,
right,
and totally kill it. If you knew that happened, I'd probably get out there with a water hose and really soak it. Yeah. And that would probably be my opinion on that. But hopefully now that the yard's dormant, like you might affect the lower root system a little bit. But hopefully, it's just minimal damage. And if it's damaged, hopefully it's a small area and you can cut it out and resod it.
Hopefully it's Bermuda and
it'll recover.
It'll recover.
You're going to get the question I want, Nick. But I'm going to go into the next one. It says, with warm weather, will our grass in the Dallas area come out of dormancy sooner? Yeah, I think we kind of explained that earlier. I think we kind of had that week and a half of freezing temperatures, but there wasn't a lot of ice or snow that set on the lawn. And as long as we continue with this warmer trend and we can get our soil temps up quicker, I mean, it's really dependent upon if you scalp your lawn, if you have a thin bladed, Bermuda, zoysia lawn, get those soil temps up quicker. And if we get that average soil temp up into those lower 50s, then yeah, it's going to come out of
which will
dormancy
still
quicker.
be, I think, a little while because our nighttime temperatures are still getting down into the 30s.
We were 38 this morning, I
Yeah.
think. So again, my understanding of it is you got to take 7 days, and then you got to average your nighttime and daytime temperature together, and whatever that mean average is what your soil temp is your rough estimate. Or you can go get a soil probe and a soil thermometer and test it. I wouldn't use your child's thermometer, like one of those head thermometers that you go beep, beep, beep. Like I don't think that'll work, but they do make, you can probably get on Amazon and they make specific soil probes or
I'm not going to
thermometers
lie. I
that you
didn't know
can
they
do.
had soil thermometers.
Yeah, I think so.
It doesn't surprise me.
Mm-mm.
That's
Why wouldn't they?
that's why it doesn't surprise me.
And then you get the lovely
Abby,
the
these pictures are going to be on when they're watching it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. This is amazing. This guy did a little test drive test drive burn of the yard tonight. Dormant common Bermuda. I have a ton of thatch buildup and just overall shitty grass. Builder install. Flirting with the idea of doing this to the entire yard.
Nick, you're a fireman. I think you're an ex-fireman. I think this is a perfect question for you.
No. Absolutely not. Not in a residential area. This is for like farmers and rural areas, possibly. But for your residential yard, I understand there's benefits to it.
I've got a question for you. But like, if you're in a rural area and you're gonna, like, my parents were farmers. I grew up knowing this.
Yes.
My parents doing this. My grandparents doing this, of doing prescribed burns. But obviously, you can't be like, and I don't think we're in fire restrictions right now. But if I'm a farmer or a rancher, probably even more specifically in these days, back 30, 40 years ago, you could do a lot more without getting permission.
Right.
But like, I would imagine you being an ex-fireman, and I don't know if you were in a rural area, maybe you were.
I was out in Aubrey.
But you would think that rancher or that farmer is going to have to call the fire department.
Yes.
And like,
we had a list. We had a list of all the controlled burns that were scheduled for that day. Yeah.
Yeah, they're going to have to schedule that because they're probably going to have a water tanker on site.
And I promise you, your fire department is not going to give you permission to do that to your backyard.
I would imagine if you post that on Facebook like this person did, and like you get the right person that wants to turn that into the city, you can get fined for that, because that's...
I can imagine so.
Like, you have the chance of burning your house down, your neighbor's house down, and I get the benefits behind it. We're not saying that it's not beneficial for your
100%.
turn.
Yes.
Because it's getting rid of the thatch, it's burning off disease, it's burning off pests, it's putting nutrition back into the soil from the burn of the ash. But again, you live in the city limits, like there's limits to what you need to be. There's other things you can do to control thatch and get rid of a crappy lawn.
Yes.
Like, aeration can help control thatch, but the other thing is like dethatching your lawn. If you're mowing bi-weekly, you can get a lot of thatch. If you're way, way over fertilizing, you can get a lot of thatch. But if you're mowing on a weekly basis, you don't have to bag your clippings, because the deposits that you're putting back are free fertilizer. Tiny bits. It's going to break down on its own. So, like, I want to see what this guy thinks is, like, a lot of thatch, because I've rarely run into a lot of thatch.
That heavy. No.
Like, you'll run into a lot of thatch when you see people that are mowing, like, every 3 weeks.
Yes.
And they're not bagging, and they literally have, like, when you walk on their lawn, there's, like, mounds of, like, grass clippings, like, because it can't break that down quick enough. And at that point in time, like, there's other ways that you can do that, like scalp your lawn in the spring, and either hire your mowing company to do it, or a high school kid or middle school kids to come over and rake your lawn and eat that. Because Home Depot or Lowe's in North Texas are probably not. They sell dethatchers. They're like mechanical rakers, but maybe you can get with Sun State Rental or Sunbelt. They might rent mechanical thatchers. I know Home Depot or Lowe's, the last time I've been in there, do not. Just because there's other ways to do it, and that's not a typical practice that we do here in North Texas. I know in like Midwest climates and other climates they do that, where they're getting a lot of snow build up, they're reseeding and doing that year over year, and they get a lot of thatch. But like here it's just not necessary. There's other ways you can do it. And the way I like to do it is when I scalp, after I scalp my yard, I bag it. You got to make sure when you scalp, you bag. We didn't mention that earlier. That is the one time that you would bag and dispose of all of your, leftover grass clippings or plant material, whatever you want to call it. Then I take my leaf blower out, and then I just blow the entire lawn.
Yeah.
And blow it into piles if need be, or just, blow it into my neighbor's yard and let him have a little bit of whatever that is. That's kind of what I do. But you can do a really good, like, take your time, blow the lawn over into, your neighbor's lawn.
Yeah.
And that gets rid of your thatch. I don't think you need to, your neighbor would probably be a lot more appreciative of you blowing your, dead plant material over his lawn than burning his house down.
Yes, he does not want you blowing your fire into his yard. So please do not do that. Please do not do that.
Yeah. Well, you caught me off guard last podcast when you said, I'm Brennan. I was like, I'm Nick. So that's all I've got.
Yeah, that's all I got.
Well, thanks for tuning in again.
Yeah, I'm Nick.
I'm Brennan.
Thanks for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed this episode and that it has provided you with some good tips on how to keep your lawn looking its best. For more, be sure to subscribe to our show and follow us on social media. And remember, a greener lawn leads to a happier you.